The filming Daniel.
Hey guys, it's Daniel here, back with my Christmas reviews, and to follow up from last video's kinda disappointing Robert Zemekis motion capture Christmas movie that was Polar Express, I'm here to talk about his next Christmas motion capture movie, which by far is a bigger improvement over the other one, because today I'm going to be reviewing the 2009 Robert Zemekis motion capture version of the classic Charles Dickens Christmas tale, A Christmas Carol. So, for those of you who have absolutely no idea what the idea of Christmas Carol is by now, and I feel like you've been kind of hiding under a rock if you don't know, but for those of you who don't know, I'll explain. The plot of A Christmas Carol follows Ebenezer Scrooge, a grumpy old man who despises Christmas, treats his fellow people, including his employee Bob Cratchit, and his nephew Fred, poorly, and cares not for supporting the poor. But all of that grumpiness will change after he meets his old partner, Jacob Marley, in the form of a ghost who has been dead for 7 years and warns him about the poor effect he might have in the afterlife if he doesn't change his ways. And to help change his ways, he warns them of 3 ghosts that will come and meet Scrooge. The ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of Christmas yet to come. Or the ghost of Christmas future, what you want to pick. So it basically follows Scrooge and the ghosts as they go off to try to help Scrooge change his ways, and Scrooge realizing the true meaning of what it means to be a good sport at Christmas. Now, when I was in school, studying A Christmas Carol for English, we watched this movie just to get more of an idea so that we can help out with our work, and when watching the movie in class, I loved it. It was definitely really cool. I knew for a fact that it had mixed reactions from critics, as some people considered the movie to be too dark, and some people say that the CGI went a bit overboard. So, for this Christmas review, I've watched the movie again. So after watching it again, what do I still think? Despite what a lot of people say, I actually still love this movie. It is a great Christmas movie. Does it have its problems? Yes, it does, but it's still a really amazing film. So, what parts of the movie do I feel like are better than what people make it out to be? Well, the first thing that I will say about this movie is that, unlike the Polar Express, this film has a really big improvement in motion capture and the animation. The animation of the look of the environment that the characters live in is gorgeous. The snowy white coming down from the sky, the food looks good enough to eat, the different houses are definitely reflective of characters' personality, like Bob Cratchit's house being a little high, but also being low due to his poor treatment gotten from Ebenezer. Ebenezer's house is very dark and asthmatic for a secluded kind of character, and the character looks for the characters are definitely really good. Now, I will say that there were a few parts that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but for the most part, they looked like what I would imagine a Christmas Carol character would look like. The look of Ebenezer Scrooge, the look of Bob Cratchit, the look of Jacob Marley, with the way that he just comes at you in a very kind of fashion. The story is very, very satisfying to watch as well, because not only does it stay true to the whole philosophy of the Christmas Carol legend, but it also adds new elements to help make the story more unique. Some not unnecessary, but the ones that they add are so great and spectacular, some of the best I've seen in a film. And the movie does have a good balance of tone. I mean, the comedy can get a bit over the top sometimes, but some of which were very funny to watch. But what I appreciate more is the drama. This movie will make you feel sad at the backstories that you would see for Ebenezer Scrooge and potential danger he could cause. I mean, There are so many moments in this movie that just makes you want to bawl out and see as some of the greatest moments in cinema, particularly a scene with Ebenezer Scrooge and Bob Cratchit. I won't say exactly why the scene is emotional, even though you do have to kind of put together exactly what caused this emotional scene, but the way that they just look at each other, with Ebenezer looking at Bob, but Bob not knowing he's there because it's a vision, helps to elevate the different kinds of moods that these characters are going through, and helps Ebenezer be stuck in this one spot with nowhere to go, and it's just looking Bob right in the face. Oh my god, is that scene brilliant. It's honestly probably like the most emotional, impactful scene in the entire movie, and one of the best scenes I've seen in A Christmas Carol. Even though I've not seen a lot of Christmas Carol parodies, I've only seen this one, the Mickey Mouse one, and I might have seen I don't know how many times, but this is definitely the most unique one I've seen in a Christmas Carol story. So, what about the acting? What about the motion capture characters and the actors who portray them? Well, let's talk about the biggest decider for whether or not the acting is good. Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey plays Ebenezer Scrooge in this movie. Now, I've seen Jim Carrey many times. Not a lot of his movies, but the ones that I have seen have definitely influenced it. While I felt like Jim Carrey has really influenced a lot of people over the world, but he can also come off as very subtle when he needs to be, because not only does he challenge himself as a comedian, he challenges himself as a dramatic actor as well. And I will say this, for the most part, I couldn't tell that that was Jim Carrey in this movie. I actually did see an Ebenezer Scrooge. Now, I will admit that there were a few parts where I did see Jim Carrey, but when the character has to be very down and emotional and angry many times, he can come off as a real, genuine Ebenezer Scrooge. So, this might be one of Jim's best performances I've ever seen. He's really good in this movie. And I wasn't expecting him to, because he was like a big comedian and all, so I don't think I could have seen him as Ebenezer Scrooge, but he's definitely better than I thought he would be. I know a lot of people are not too fond of his performance, and that's all power to you, but I really loved him in this movie, and I felt like, for the most part, he came off as a genuine Ebenezer Scrooge, so well done, Jim! But it's not just Ebenezer Scrooge that Jim Carrey has to improvise for. He's also been cast as the three ghosts, the past, the present, and the future one. Two of which, the present and the future one, I think he did really well. I mean, sometimes I felt like the present was a little bit too over the top, but I mean, he's meant to be the most whimsical, so for the most part he did come off. It was pretty good. But the yet to come ghost is definitely better, because he's very secluded and not very present. You never see his face, which of course you're not supposed to, but Jim Carrey handles that very well. The first one, though, I will say, it did kind of look a little weird, which I will get to later. But not only do we have Jim Carrey, we also have Gary Oldman in the movie, playing Bob Cratchit and Jacob Marley, but also was doing a little walking stuff for Bob's son, Tiny Tim. I think Gary Oldman pulls off a very genuine Bob Cratchit as well, because he comes off as generally wise, but also whimsical in the role. He's definitely spot on. Colin Firth as Fred, I did think he was really cool as well, because he was very unique and had a likable personality to him. I wouldn't mind going for a Christmas dinner with this dude. He's a kind gentleman. Now, one of the biggest criticisms towards this version of A Christmas Carol is that even though the story is very well done, a lot of people were very criticising towards the dark tone that this movie seems to take, feeling like it's too over the top and dark for this kind of Christmas Carol version, because a lot of people feel like that A Christmas Carol is meant to have a balance between whimsical and dark, but this one seemed especially dark. And I think the reason why it gets criticism is because many of them come off as too over the top, to the point where it's kind of comical. And yeah, there were a few parts where it did go too over the top, where it did kind of make me chuckle a little bit, and some of them were very too dark, but honestly, I don't have a criticism towards the dark tone that much, because it's definitely unique to see a dark tone in a PG-rated film, which is A Christmas Carol, which is meant to be like for a all-ages kind of point of view, so it's nice to see that this movie has a dark tone. So, kids, so kids can really see like the realism, but also can appreciate the wonder that A Christmas Carol offers, and can also really dig into some philosophies that this movie offers, because the movie is discussing about the consequences of an action, but also the cause of the action that they committed to eventually get that action to be a consequence. Because there are just so many scenes where you would see Scrooge in his past, to compare that to the present Scrooge and possibly a future Scrooge, that helps us to really sympathise with him, but also to kind of make us think, well, come on, you can do it, we all have bad days, but you can come back, and we want him to succeed in finding the reason why he should care about Christmas, because behind all that grumpiness, he's trying to keep another side of him, like, downgraded, because you can tell that he does have a bit of a Carrey side. I mean, what's the first thing that he does when he first visits the past? He starts feeling happy. Like, all that nostalgia that he feels deep down is still inside him, but he can't express it without being harsh or rude. So it makes us really empathise with this character, and as well as other characters about how they could end up. Many messages that the film tries to get across, especially ones that we can come up with, are definitely interesting facts to think about. One in particular is that there's a consequence to Scrooge's actions near the end of the film that affects the Cratchit family. I won't say how, even though you probably might know what it is, but the fact that this emotional turmoil happens for the Cratchit family makes Scrooge realise that if this happens, could the Cratchits end up like Scrooge, being all secluded and trying to keep a stern look, even though they don't feel that way inside. It's a very interesting fact for a PG-rated animated movie. It's a huge reason as to why I feel like this movie is more unique than what people make it out to be. However, despite how great this movie is, why has this movie started to feel like less appreciated than other Christmas carols? Well, like I said earlier, it was the dark tone, probably the motion capture, and I guess we should get to the problems I had. One of the biggest ones is, while this movie has an improvement of animation than the Polar Express, it's only 75% improved. The other 25% still has some problems. First of all, it's pretty clear that this movie was shot in 3D, because whenever there's like a huge scene, you're following Scrooge along the line, like it's almost being held like a camera. And while it's not as possibly bad as some other clips of 3D films that I've seen that like to shove the technology in your face, this one does get a few weird shots. It almost feels like you're on one of those VR rides at Universal Studios, like a Shrek 4D kind of ride, so yeah, it does come off as kind of distracting, and plus, those action sequences come out of nowhere. Like, these kind of pointless scenes kind of, like, brought a tiny bit of the movie down. Like, when we see the end of The Ghost of Christmas Past, Scrooge uses this, like, giant's pyramid type of thing to put the candle out, but then it blasts him off into space like a rocket, which looks cool, but in terms of the movie, it looks really silly. And there are a few scenes like that, like, it's like this chase scene between Scrooge and the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. Although I will admit, it did kind of lead to a pretty funny payoff when we see a tiny Scrooge, because, you know, it's kind of funny to see a high-pitched old man Jim Carrey. But speaking of that, whenever the movie decides to put in some comedy as well, they did kind of flat, especially the Jacob Marley ghost gag, which just comes off as unfunny and out of nowhere in this dark tone. I mean, really? Was that really necessary? And lastly, while I did say that most of Jim Carrey's performances were great, where he kind of doesn't shine that much though is when he's playing the Ghost of Christmas Past. I mean, don't get me wrong, the design for him looks really cool, but he has this really weird accent, and he kind of twitches a few times now and again, which just seems a bit off. I mean, what? I feel like there needs to be a bit more adjustment to that character. But, again, it's not that big of an issue, because while he doesn't shine as the Ghost of Christmas Past, when you combine him with the other two ghosts, it definitely adds some more emotional trauma to him, because they're representing parts of Scrooge. Because, you know, the past ghost is detailing his old nostalgic memories, the present is detailing how he feels, the kind of grumpiness that he feels now, but also the worrisome that the future ghost brings for his future. So, they're all parts of Scrooge's life, and the film definitely borrows a heavily kind of influence on that. And I know most of my words don't make any sense, but you know what I mean. To conclude, I think that this movie has to be one of the most underrated Christmas movies I've ever seen. No doubt. Sure, there are a few 3D effects that kind of watered it down, and there was some very forced and over-the-done moments, but the parts that this movie gets down, it gets really down. I mean, the whimsiness of its light tone, the interesting and emotional dark route that this movie takes, the acting is spectacular, the animation is improved, the score and the music is beautiful, with all the different Christmas tunes that they always sing, and I gotta say, this movie leaves off on a very satisfying note. The ending is definitely whimsical. Jim Carrey's performance is definitely a spot-on part of this movie. So yeah, I'm not just being sarcastic about what I feel about this movie. This really is an underrated Christmas classic that deserves way more praise. And plus, the flaws that I have, I actually just ignored because I was having too much fun with what I loved. So I definitely think that this movie did need a bit more praise than it's given, because you definitely got to read more into it. And I have to give this movie a 4.5 out of 5. It's great. And if you haven't watched it yet, go watch it out and give it a chance. Think of the information I given about the movie. But anyway, I'm Daniel. I'm asking you, what do you think? Do you think it's underrated like I do, or do you agree with most of my new critics that think it's like an average, kind of mediocre version of A Christmas Carol? And what is your favourite adaptation of A Christmas Carol? Let me know in the comments section below. And I'm Daniel, reviewing movies, TV shows, getting Christmas warmed up again. Till then, peace out, man.